Have a seat. It's about time we had the talk. Now I know you're just about approaching that age where you're old and ugly enough that certain YouTubers and Discord moderators no longer find you sexually appealing. So it's time you learned the truth before you just go out there dipping your unprotected wallet into every other cash shop you see. See, there comes a time in every young person's life when their gaming starts to change. You start to notice a few multiplayers out there. I mean, really, have you seen some of the games out there these days? Let me tell you, some of them have some real, massive, almost too big aspirations for profit. There are some real dangers out there that you need to know about. Now, I'm not trying to scare you. I just want you to be safe out there. So it's time we had the talk about pay to win.
Do you guys not have phones?
Yeah, you guys all have phones.
Now, before we can go ahead and discuss extort to succeed, we have to define what tax to achieve actually is. We need an agreed upon definition that absolutely no one will argue about ever, because this is the internet and everyone agrees on everything here as a collective. Let's start by breaking down emotionally and, after recovering, analyzing the words pay to win. Starting with pay. I don't think there's much to argue about here. The idea is you going slowly homeless as you allow the continual extortion of your monetary value in exchange for emotional satisfaction, and the application of a mental treadmill on your frontal cortex, allowing you to momentarily escape the suffering of existing in this reality. Or in cave monkey terms, you give money, you get something for money. You get feel-good feel when you get the thing that you paid money for. The multiplayer context for this doesn't change much. You pay money to Game Studio running game, you get some form of value relating to game being run by Game Studio. 2 isn't too much of a problem here either, unless you don't speak English at all, or you've conveniently fallen down the stairs at the correct angle to forget the word. 2 just signals us approaching the condition of the final word, win. And this is where the problems come in. What does it mean to win in a multiplayer game? How do you even win a game that technically never has an end like an MMO? Is winning a continuum or simply a brief moment of success before returning to failure? How many times do you have to win to say you've won? What am I doing inside your house? And how come you leave your doors unlocked? Winning is unfortunately highly contextual and depends on the game you're playing. For now, we'll stick with the basic definition of winning being defined as the gain of some inherent advantage that significantly alters your gameplay experience in a positive way over other players that you're competing against. Now, that's a pretty straightforward definition, but to make it even simpler than that.
But am I saying that I'm better than you? I guess I'm going a little further than you are. Yeah, I'm fucking better than you. Okay? Much better than you. You are garbage.
The focus here will be on MMOs and other similar online multiplayer games, because as fucking disgusting as getting the arguably most important side character for Mass Effect was, nobody really cares that just like any other Friday night, you're just staying in playing with yourself.
So what we look at as surprise mechanics, but I think it's...
Let's start all the way back at the beginning of the end, to be frank, where this whole nightmare started in the first place. Now, I know not what you're thinking, but yes, horse armor exists, but it wasn't the first transaction where fiat currency was exchanged for online digital bullshit. In fact, once upon a time, digital bullshit was free after purchasing the game. Games like Total Annihilation offered free new units to download every now and then, all the way back in the 90s, before anyone knew what you could achieve with a plane ticket and some determination. But it goes back even further than that. Way back when, in the forever ago time, when your great-grandpappy was still a suspicious-looking tadpole and Jesus had not yet been NTR cream-pied into his mother by God, otherwise known as the late 80s, there was such a thing as shareware games where you could pay real money to change the way the pixels on your screen looked. So despite what you may have written down in your manifesto or what you've deluded yourself into believing, paying for garbage online has always been here since almost the very beginning. Incidents like the Cameo winter outfit and Bugthesda My Little Pony armor set for buck-broken boys were just the global corporate awakening and realization that the people who buy and play your games aren't your customers, but rather just another resource to mine for monetary gain to keep your shareholders satisfied. Now, if you're a true connoisseur of metaphysical philosophy, you'll also realize that pay to win has likely likely been around longer than just video games. Do you think those senators stabbing Caesar got those knives for free? Someone had to pay for them, and the one guy who didn't buy a knife that day certainly felt underpowered. Do you think Cain enjoyed knowing that Abel had won God's favor by paying a larger price to win him over? I didn't think so. Consequently, Cain followed up by purchasing the Application of Rock DLC before Abel could redeem God's Google Play gift card for exactly one limited time blessing. Due to this small, insignificant microtransaction of his brother's soul into the bank account of heaven, Cain was punished with a damage reflection buff, the ability to build entire cities in a wasteland, and worst of all, a woman and child, effectively kicking off the pay-to-win arms race for the whole of humanity. Not to sound too much like a hippie, but the truth is that we've all been slaves to the figment of our imagination that is money, since two proto-human monkeys decided that a grape is worth more than a cucumber slice. Video games are just the latest expression of exchanging our value for the illusion of an advantage over others in some game of life. Sure, you can go ahead and purchase that flaming sword and beat me to death with it, and I can return the favor to you by finding out where you live, purchasing for myself and your mother a nice seafood dinner before swiftly abandoning her to raise another bastard child, but one that this time around she can actually be proud of one day because they don't use mommy's credit card to buy shiny pixels online. We've each personally chosen our own method of paying to win, one of which might be considered superior to the other, but at our core, we're the same. But now we're just reaching elbow deep into the next topic. In some MMOs, winning means numbers, fat cock digits exploding across your screen that are larger and veinier than everyone else's, as you all whip out your weapons and stats to compare to everyone else around you in the communal sausage fest known as PvE. In other games, it's all about exposing yourself to others, cosmetically speaking, and flexing your cool looking shit in front of everyone whose monitor just so happens to be graced by your character. And in others beyond that, it's about being able to delete other players from existence by just rolling your forehead across your keyboard without your opponents even understanding what the fuck just happened and how they died to an overgeared but clueless brainlet. More often than not, and in the most Korean way possible, it's all of these at once usually. These three great primevals of power, looks and unfair advantages, are obviously accompanied by some lesser evils that are there to lead you into temptation and down the dark path into the clutches of your local EA executive. But we'll get to that in a moment. The point I'm trying to make here is that paying to win usually depends on the end objectives of the game you're playing. It's contextual. You getting a hold of the bad dragon skin for your Dragunov in Call of Duty doesn't change the fact that you're still shit at aiming and will never be an Area 51 escaped experiment like Shroud. But being able to pay money for an exclusive outfit in Animal Crossing means you're accessing and applying something that others can't, because we're not all Middle Eastern sheikhs who wipe their ass with gold bars sometimes because the platinum ones might be mistaken for silver ones by your friends and family. Now, if it just so happens that you are filthy rich and can't afford to wear blackface in public and later in life pay to make the problem go away, you're probably not thinking, "Those motherfuckers!" But the rest of us who live down here in the dirt are. So then how do these monkey paw level developers who keep giving you what you want but in the worst way possible keep getting to shit this garbage into our open minds?
All of this just works. It's not.
You ever heard the story about boiling the frog? Probably not, since critical thinking was abolished by world governments somewhere around the beginning of time. Anyway, you take a frog, you toss him in a pot filled with boiling hot water, and Peter comes knocking at your door asking why it's taking so long for you to kill that singular frog, and if while they're here they can put down your family dog. But if you toss a frog in cold water and then begin to slowly raise the temperature, the frog won't notice because it's too busy arguing online about the semantics of what forms of monetary extortion are acceptable in its video games, that it not only paid full retail price price for, but did so before the game was even fully released, while doing its absolute best to defend a multi-million-dollar company against any form of valid criticism. By the time the water's boiling, the French people in your house are asking what smells so good. The trick being played on you here is that gaming companies keep telling you that it's just the tip, and that they've got poor, undernourished families to feed and workers to pay, but in reality, they're already so deep inside your wallet that it looks like an uncooked chicken has been used as a boxing glove. And most of the time, the companies getting away with this garbage aren't some small indie dev with a passion project, but a money-sexual AAA game studio that's so rich and powerful that the CEO could molest a bunch of people, order a hit on someone, get exposed, and then still cut themselves a bonus check for enough cash to fund the entire military of Chad for the next 2.5 years. Allegedly. Worse than that is the alteration of words and language. You ever notice in movies how characters living in a dystopia don't realize they're living in a dystopia? You ever notice how we now all default to the word COVID instead of calling it the Kung Flu? Well, it's the same for the kids growing up in this new system. They don't even know what a fucking nightmare it all is because they've never gotten the chance to experience how good things were in the past. To them, it becomes normal that you're gonna pay $60 for a game, then another $5 to unlock the leveling on your character, then another $2 for the XP boost so you can keep up with your friends, then another $8 to unlock the character's ability to wear equipment, and then finally another $15 to unlock global chat just so their underdeveloped brains can get that dopamine hit as they get banned for calling someone a nick. Now, you might be one of those self-righteous gigachads that refuse to give any of your excess money to any of these real-life treasure goblins, but you have to understand that not everyone out there is capable of being so dangerously based. In fact, you're not even worthy of being considered as anything more than a parasite to most pay-to-win abusing AAA game studios, and their piece of shit devs who think that numbers in a statistics chart indicate fun. Believe it or not, you're not actually even the target audience they're looking for. But with enough suffering and deliberate inconveniences, you might just become exactly what they want you to be.
We really need to understand where did we go wrong. Okay,
We can categorize the supporters of pay-to-win into 3 generalized states of decay. The addicts, the victims, and the living embodiment of the hunchback of Notre Dame, but with tons of money and without all the charisma. The addicts are a simple group. They've fallen in love with a game, likely one that has little to minimal pay-to-win to start off with. Slowly they become hooked, and as they get deeper into the game, or maybe as times and the company making the game changes, a few minor but not insignificant pay-to-win tumors pop up here and there. Eventually, pay-to-win becomes a requirement for them to keep being competitive in their second favorite hand-eye coordination pastime. They've been eased into it and fall into the depths of either the fear of missing out or knowing they will never be the best if they keep playing but not paying. Next we have the victims, and unlike the addicts, they're not slowly lowered into a vat of thievery but rather dunked right in without knowing any better. These ones are usually young and impressionable, just the way my school priests liked them. They get manipulated into paying to unlock the fun in a video game for a limited time before the fun runs out and needs to be repurchased. And then finally the whales. These are the big boys with more money than activated undamaged neurons who will drop 50k on a mobile game like it's nothing. These are the people, using that term loosely, that the gaming devs give the most of a shit about, because as enjoyable as it may be for your average pay-to-win dev to witness little Billy plunge his entire family into crippling, unrecoverable poverty because he really needs that Ronaldo on his fantasy soccer team, it's just not that sustainable. But more likely, it's also just not the same as the pure monetary ecstasy achieved by knowing you managed to inconvenience some ultra wealthy guy so much with your shitty game that he'll go out of his way to pay to make these problems fuck off. Also, whales account for the lion's share of the profit in this unwilling sex dungeon of a segment in the gaming sector. What this all means is that it doesn't matter how much or little you spend on your favorite time waster. Somewhere out there's a sentient ATM machine throwing cash into these games like they're sliding down a pole in a thong, which only serves to motivate developers to keep ejaculating these systems across a prettied up Excel spreadsheet instead of actually making a good game. As you can imagine, it's even more upsetting upsetting to these pay-to-win devs when someone releases a game without any pay-to-win mechanics, because it exposes them for what big, gigantic pieces of shit that they are. And worse still, in the gaming sector, they're starting to realize that if you want people to play your game, you've actually got to make a good game. So now they're starting to make pay-to-win games that are really good and fun to play. Unlike in real life, it's the minorities here who hold power over everyone else and dictate the future direction of this industry. The rest of us just happen to be along for the ride. And here's where the problems really begin, because I lied. There's not 3 groups, there's 4. And this last collective may be even worse than the prior group, because they don't just use pay to win, they actively defend it.
Somehow we can finesse some gray-bearded 30-something-year-old man into emptying out his credit card.
So pay to win is a spectrum, but the way that I look at it is there a consistent correlation with no ceiling between the amount of money you can put into a game and the amount of power you can get out?
Ladies and gender dysphorias, this man is British, which may be a crime against nature, but what he's saying is actually pretty sensible. Now I know what you're thinking, and yes, that's right, I am the baseline for correct opinions, but don't worry, it's by choice that I allow everyone else to keep being wrong for now. But the problem here is that when we get to the weasel words like pay for advantage or pay for convenience, we tend to lose sight of the fact that it doesn't matter whether it's anal or nasal. The fact remains that you're letting someone else fuck your girlfriend, or in this case, something that's even more important than that, your wallet. So let's unblur these lines using our previously defined terminology. Pay for advantage puts you ahead of others through the use of money, allowing you to win faster or harder than others or get somewhere before anyone else does. Pay to win. Pay for convenience depends on the convenience and the context of the game. It's a nuanced dance of it's pay to win. Like it or not, you're paying money to get rid of intentionally shitty and limiting mechanics or systems, meaning that they now exist or were put there in the first place with the express purpose of being a nuisance. Pay to advance. You're paying to skip through the game and not actually have to play. If that's not the purest form of pay to win, then I don't know what is. Even if it doesn't get you all the way to your ultimate goal, you're skipping your way through a bunch of stuff you'd have to do either way, getting you closer to what you want. And let me recite to you the Bible passage of my favorite quote from the pay to win defenders. It doesn't matter if you can pay for it. You could just earn the exact same stuff by just playing the game. Really though? Can you really? Tell me how unlocking Darth Vader's going for you in that Star Wars game. And even being generous in the cases where it is so, then what is your time worth to you? How many hours of mindless grinding of the same content over and over again are you willing to do to get a fraction of the way towards the thing you want that someone else purchased for $10 in under 30 seconds? Now turning to Bible passage 69 verse 420. But what about those poor, super busy players who love the game but just don't have the time to play as much as anyone else? Surely they should be given the opportunity to pay money to be able to play with their friends at the same level. Stop being retarded. Why does something as simple as catch-up mechanics have to involve money? Why are you letting them shift the goalposts here right off a fucking cliff? You and I both know that it's not the single working father with 3 kids and a treasure trail of poor life decisions who's spending their money on all those boosts. It's usually that elite hacker, basement god gamer who never logs off and spends almost 100% of his time in-game in order to be the best. The fact that the gaming industry has even managed to convince you that monetary transactions are a necessity for allowing people to catch up should concern you, and have you questioning whether MK Ultra really was a failure like they told us it was. Turning now across the pages to another Bible verse, but it's the only way to support the game. Well then I'm not sorry, but the game has a shitty business model, and instead of spending so much time figuring out how to extract wealth from its customers in the most manipulative ways possible, all the while ruining the gaming experience, maybe they should have been spending a little bit more time planning out a better payment model. Stop acting like these developers have no choice but to be a leech. Expand your mind, or at least stop thinking in binaries. This may come as a surprise, but there's usually more than 2 options when dealing with most life situations. You know, the worst part about all these defenders of all these pay-to-win systems is they give devs justifications for them to keep acting like shit, and not just keep acting like shit, to push even worse things on us in the future. But right about now, it might sound like everything in gaming is pay to win, but there is some stuff that is fair for you to be spending money on aside from just the box price.
No, that's good. I just want to make sure that's where we're going.
Ask yourself, are you paying for content? Game is made, you've paid for game. That's fine. Game makes expansion that furthers progression and alters the gameplay experience in some significant manner. You pay for expansion. That's fine. Game makes singular, inconsequential side character that alters nothing but just so happens to also give you an ultra powerful weapon that makes the game easier. That's fine too, but wait, no it's not, because it's just pay to win with extra steps. Even if you didn't get the I definitely had the sex before, divine Allah blessed weapon, the fact that they had the gall to alter the meaning and journey of their original game instead of releasing a further progression on their steaming pile of an original idea is already a sign that you're not a person to them but a number that they get to report to their shareholders as a success. Paying a subscription model. That's fine too, but only under the contractual obligation signed in the CEO's blood that in return for your continual funding of the game, you will continue to see progress content-wise while also receiving regular updates and fixes to bugs that never should have been in the game to begin with. Not only that, but if they release the game for free and then tell you, no, you can play the game for free, but you get better shit when we add a subscription model. The only reason you allowed them to play the game in some limited capacity was so you could hook them in financially and drain their bank accounts too. A general rule of thumbstick with which people used to beat their wives is if you're already in the game playing with yourself and you're asked to spend money to do something that impacts or alters the way the game is played, then it's pay to win. The one case that rides the line here is cosmetics. If the ultimate point of the game is looking pretty, then by definition, you're winning by purchasing poorly paid for game assets. But if it's more of a non-consequential, I want to look pretty while I achieve the real main objectives of this game, then you're on that border between acceptable and Mexico and may find yourself deported depending on who you run into. If the cosmetics, however, do alter gameplay, give you some advantage, give you camouflage, alter the way a certain mechanic or hitbox in the game works, then it's pay to win. In some cases, when it comes to cosmetics, it's even pay to nerf. Now that we've worked our way through the world's longest preamble, we can actually get to the real meat and potatoes of this video. Money and greed. Nobody. Yes. No. The formula for success in the video game industry is a surprisingly simple one that's becoming exceedingly obscured and difficult to execute on. The formula for success in video games is conclusion time. Pay to win is going nowhere and it's only going to get worse over time because despite any community outcry or distaste people might have for these systems, there's always going to be some group of unsanitary, uncaring, subhuman pay piggies willing to throw the GDP of a small African nation into some barely concealed gambling mechanic or pay to win model just because they have the money to do so. Until it is collectively decided that no form of pay to win is acceptable at all in any form of video game whatsoever, the financial beatings will continue. Put simply in the words of Mr. Bones and his murder coaster, the ride never ends. Oh yeah, and by the way, one last thing. I want you to remember this. I want you to remember this video if you think that NFTs are gone from the video gaming space forever. Because they're not. As always, a big thank to my subscribers, both old and new, and a special thank to the money mafia who waste their money on me every single month and get to watch these videos before anyone else. Hope you enjoyed, or at least were cripplingly depressed by the future of pay to win in this industry. More content soon. Bye. Well, hello there. Not quite sure what the hell you're still doing here, but Just so you know, I've got a present for you for making it this far into the video. I went out and programmed what's probably the world's shittiest website. Now the front end of this thing's not much to write home about, but the back end is what's important. In order to justify the fact that once upon a time I went to university for engineering, I've put together a formula with a bunch of coefficients to assist in making a tool for people to decide whether the game they're playing or planning to play is gonna be pay to win. Now the neat part about this tool is that on the front end, I just ask you a bunch of questions and this gives you an answer. This tells you whether it's worth your time or not. But there is one problem. Diablo Immortal released. And the game is so goddamn pay to win that it fucked up all my coefficients. So currently the website is up and running and you can use it. But the second that this video goes live and that everyone can see it, I'm going to be reworking all of those, probably adding in a few more questions. But you know what? End of the day, it's there for you to use. Feel free to do so. Helps you figure out how bad the game you're playing really is.